He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster. And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. Today's installment examines 3 ways we might possibly wrap our meat brains around this concept of what's in the dark.
You're not afraid of the dark, are you?
Hello, welcome on in. If you're new here, I'm James, and this is another part of a series of videos where I'm documenting aspects of artwork and self-study and self-examination. This particular episode, I'm sorry if things got dragged out a little bit. I had a few cool things happen, but I spent a long time on this particular effort because it's not an easy one. I've got good friends, and I'm going to mention a few later in the video, so stay tuned to that. They encouraged me to go ahead, and they also have their own material, so I wanted to make sure that this material kind of went hand in hand with what they're presenting, because we're all kind of given the same message. I've wrestled with this over my own so-called qualifications, but life experience say that doesn't really matter at this point. I can impart what I know. And I'm doing this in a lighthearted manner, not preachy. The point is to document some thoughts aimed at perhaps a younger me. Yeah, this has been kind of the point all along. Or those interested at all in what I did, say, after I'm gone. It clarifies some aspects, and anything read into the work is a projection of the viewer and nothing to do with me. True. So what are these 3 points? Well, these 3 points: danger of obsession as a reflection of the self and erosion of values. This is a warning against dwelling on the negative. If you're fighting monsters or projections and losing your moral compass by internalizing that chaotic, identifying yourself with the darker or perceived evil aspects to life, this can be delusional, aggrandizement, depression, or a sense of hopelessness, allowing others to make decisions for you, or running with the pack instead of thinking for yourself. Resting blame or shame outside. Guilt often keeps one down and vulnerable. Doom scrolling, artificial companions, dependencies. This allows for aura leaks and parasitic energies, whether thought forms, qliphothic entities, or obsessive complexity, or something a lot worse, possession or extreme psychosis. This can affect your aura, the spheres of influence that you have on others and what others have on you.
Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The shadow knows.
As a reflection of the self, slaying the dragon is metaphor for striving to control the passions. The point is to understand it for what it is and not be afraid of it. Incorporate it into your overall being. If you dismiss it as an unacceptable aspect of your life or think you've killed it, which is impossible, it will be free to subvert and sabotage your life, if not do harm to others because of your imbalances and your skewed points of view. Most likely, this appears as the projections we put onto those we dislike or judge harsher than others, to forming the us and them mentality, leading toward the third aspect. And what do they say? They say power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Guardrails are removed. Power trips In the context of the aphorism by Nietzsche, it shows how fanatics, reformers, and extreme ideologies often adopt and condone the very methods, mindsets, and worldviews of the very things they think that they're fighting and become part of it. Deliberately defying your will, your true path. The oversoul will give you a perception of hell. It's hubris against that. Yeah. Basically glorifying the ego. And that's what the left-hand path kind of highlights, is glorifying the ego and less emphasis on approaching that inner axis mundi, that inner spark that the Gnostics talk about. I talk about it as the holy guardian angel. At some point, I'm going to make a video about that, if I'm allowed. One of the biggest crimes is uncontrolled rage. Unchecked rage causes just mayhem. And Ivan the Terrible is a good example of that. I'm going to throw a picture of that up. Just look at the anguish of realizing what he had done. It's not even about taking responsibility. It's the sheer and utter horror of the chaos he just committed and taking the life of his son, someone he loved. The anguish of that moment of realization, because you had no control. Facing actual spiritual evil is not a joke. The movies depict things quite dramatically. What is true is the lies, the manipulation, and the desire to cause as much fear and humiliation to feed on. The more you know self and face that darkness, the weaknesses, and not allow these externally to manipulate feelings, the less vulnerable you'll be. Your own imagination can be your worst enemy, and it's a double-edged sword. But this is not limited to spooky doings. Even a group mind is situational, and a lynch mob mentality whipped into a thirst for blood will move until satiated or the energy grounds out. This can also be possessive as one gets swept along, especially if there's a way in and they're already feeling affronted. Then there's an emotion there that latches on and kind of grabs, and you're swept along in the tide. It's quite literally crazy to watch dynamics of how that happens. With frustrations, they fuel a larger entity or a thought form, and this is hell-bent on the intended outcome. So one of the other aspects that we all tend to do, especially in society, is that when we dismiss that id, darker aspects to consciousness, it also feeds a group consciousness. So we tend to have the demonized other, whether it's a country, whether it's an ideology, whether it's a race. And unfortunately, we still need a lot of work on that. You know, individually, we're responsible for ourselves, and that's where we need to start. I don't know how else to start solving this problem. The demonized other, or what we call the scapegoat, is usually a projection. It's something that we demonize. So you end up with thousands of people burned at the stake thanks to a book. That's the demonized other. Those are projections of their fears based on an ideology. The point is to incorporate, not dismiss, nor destroy, which is rather impossible anyway. This produces the Loki. You know, it will run amok. The unconscious will get your attention one way or another by either wrecking your life or helping. It can literally create hell on earth if you want, especially if you go against your calling. And knowing what your calling is and deliberately doing that is basically a desecration of your own raison d'etre, your reason for existing even. It depends on how you can see it. The unconscious will get your attention, your oversoul. Slaying a dragon is a metaphor. Alchemically, it is power. Whether it's an earthly nature, I mean, it can come in many forms. Dragon is an elemental in the Eastern, but for the most part, we're talking about elemental forces in our psyche. And that's to deal with, our urges and our rage and, power that gets us into trouble. It's a metaphor for reining in that power. It highlights the Gospel of Thomas, number 20. If you bring forth what is inside you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is inside you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. So we've got the King in Yellow back up because it kind of touches on a video I did earlier on the King in Yellow. And it brought up in that video some of our shadow side. And I'm still reading it. It's not an easy read, but I did want to clarify the Edward Bulwer Lytton Zanoni here is come out new last year. And this particular one is a compendium of actually 3 different ones. If you read the author preface, and there's some footnotes in here that kind of help put context in, because this was written in the 1800s. So you've got the dweller on the threshold I'm waiting to get to, but it's kind of neat because the character Zanoni it's like a Cagliostro. He shows up and he's interested in herbs. He's such a rich character, but you don't hear it from him. You hear it from kind of everyone else. And then when you do get dialogue, that's when you learn some other things because of his reactions to mundane situations. It's kind of interesting where his mind is running all the time and where he has to operate as well. He's not looking down his nose at anyone per se. He's fair. He's fair on a level because he seems to have been around a while and understands more. So he has a compassion, which is what we're looking for. I can allude to the legend and let folks look it up if they want, but there's something I ran across recently where it was described of 2 serpents. These are the Uraeus in Egypt that Horus actually tamed or employed the services of to fight a battle against his uncle Set. So that's to do with the twin serpents of the caduceus, because you need both sides in a balance to create that cosmic egg that sits at the top. And we talked about the cosmic egg in my last video as well. You need the balance of those 2 forces to become one. So that has to do with a callback to Egypt and Hermes Trismegistus. Basically, Horus uses them to battle his uncle, which is chaos. Depending on your upbringing, most people have a basic set of ethical standards to adhere to. A framework or moral compass informs our decisions as we interact. Guiding this is something perhaps taken for granted or dismissed these days, and it's often called a conscience. As a result, there's offshoots that can occur: compassion, empathy, accountability, and a general ability to foresee to some extent through the methods of cause and effect. These kind of things generally guide our decisions, especially when we can put ourselves in position of the other. If we can see their point of view, then we might see what our actions can affect them, and we might rethink our actions before we even commit to them, either in some kind of harmonious relationships with the things we surround ourselves with, or by way of instant feedback somehow, depending on the nature of the activity. But there's a problem. In art, value isn't absolute. We can show you a graphic. You'll see that the black and the white squares, they look completely different, but if you blend the 2 together, you can see it's the same color and it's relative to what's around it. So if something sits against dark, it'll look lighter, and if something is in the light, it'll appear darker. So as these squares blend, you'll see that there is no absolute value. You can't trust your eyes. You can't trust your meat brain to tell you the truth. You have to look at it from more than one angle and give it a bit of time before being rash in decision making, or make it a better informed decision that way. And that also includes taking other people's point of view, because nobody's seeing it exactly the same way. And we're all richer for that diversity. Aspire to seek the truth of it, not assume that's the reality seen at face value. But these are the things that we dismiss, but they need to be incorporated back into us, because they give us strength. They give us our backbone. They give us the ability to decide. And it cycles. Again, it doesn't really ever end. You're always learning about yourself. I mean, you're the ultimate lab. So it's always relative. Evil is not absolute. Two farmers have two different crops. One's relying on it to rain, and the other, it doesn't want it to rain because it would ruin his crops. It rains. Is it evil? It's evil for this guy because it destroyed his crops, but it was beneficial to this guy. It just is. So again, it's relative. Sure, I know practitioners on both sides. I know black magicians, I know white magicians. But as my ethical rulings prevent me from judging, and it is not allowed for proselytizing or trying to convert or otherwise convince them of any other ideology. In other words, you can't mess with their current model of the universe. That's wrong. Doesn't matter, black, white, or otherwise. If I was to impose such ideas or approach it in this manner, it makes me just as counteractive, or in this case, in the wrong. DC Comics, and it had Shazam's origin story, and he goes down into a tunnel, and there's the statues of the 7 deadly sins, and then the Shazam guys at the end of the tunnel with that block over his head. But the 7 deadly sins were something that I grew up with, and again, there's films about that. 7 is one of them. It's pretty brutal. What's another sin? Hubris, or defiance. Not questioning, but defiant overconfidence. Something we call superbia, and that's what the green lion is for. It needs to be dissolved. It needs to be taken down. It eats the sun. The green lion eating the sun signifies that surrender of superbia, to stop the ego feeling like it's a know-it-all. It happens when you read a lot. Back with the dragons and our shadow aspects that need to be incorporated in, there was a really cool example, and I'm sure there's a legend behind it all. It's what's called a gebeth, and it was a mechanic used in this film Earthsea. It was a book before that, which I haven't read, admittedly, but the character in here, Ged, he abuses his magic through hubris. Basically, he does something in a dare, and he ends up splitting off the dark part of his personality, and it takes over a dead body, basically runs amok in his name and causes all kinds of problems throughout the country. And, you know, there's a background of some other aspects to do with the feminine, but it's a fine example of, once he understands and gains balance between his male and feminine side in the story, he has the opportunity to face his gebeth. There's a picture of it there, and reintegrate his shadow. Tries to get a rise out of him, and blaming things like his father or the death of his mother or things like that to feed his hurt little orphan side. So the gebeth lies to him, and in the end, he sees through that and basically embraces it and reincorporates it. It's a really cool example of a shadow work. If you study Hermetism or alchemy, well, specifically we're talking Kabbalistic here. We're talking about a set of entities called the Qliphoth, and they live on the negative tree of life. So as above, so below. So you've got the tree of light and the tree of darkness. And the qliphoth are husks. In the Jewish texts, you'll find that they are the remnants of things that are no longer really needed. They're cast off, whether they're old habits, whether they're rumors, they're thought forms, they're ghosts of the bones of people, they're earthbounds, they're vampires essentially. They cannot self-sustain because they don't have the spark that we do. So the qliphotic forces tend to leech off of others, a quick power trip. So those on the left-hand path employ qliphotic forces to get things, and in the end, they burn out really quick. So it's kind of interesting to see that, you know, the light is more durable. It takes longer, it takes patience, it takes discipline, but the rewards are real when they hit, and they're permanent. It's difficult to backslide when you really know. It's really hard to get plugged back into the matrix because you like the taste of the steak. It once you know, you can't go back. There's a responsibility there to move forward, not only to yourself, but if you can improve yourself, then something of that has to help mankind. It's a vibration. So in the end, we can blend our wavelengths, we can blend our influences, we can vibrate at a frequency and have influence on others that pulls up a little bit, or we resonate together over time. It does count. I guess it's kind of romantic in a way, and hopeful, but I don't have a choice, you know? That's what it's about. And in the end, we have to trust the process. An imbalance of energy, the vampirism aspect. Yeah, that's not only qliphotic, but people are that way too. Attention, they want the attention. They live and thrive on misery. They breed it so that everyone comes down to their level and they suck off of it. It's a form of vampirism. I'm sorry. It's an energy grab, you know, through emotional means, through emotional blackmail, through bullying. There's lots of different ways that it happens. Okay. Dion Fortune is one to think of, the ring chaos versus the ring cosmos. It evens out eventually. Thought forms are more vampiric. Look at Psychic Self-Defense. That's another good book. Karmic implications with the Akashic records. See also the aura, the vices, pathologies and the complexes, projections of the shadow, the 7 deadly sins. Light shows all. That's the thing I wanted to bring up. Once you start reaching for the light, the shadows are going to become more evident. You're going to have to deal with them.
It must be truth, above all. A man lies, he murders some part of the world.
Maintaining a lie also takes so much effort and usually cascades into, if not breeds, another lie in a series. Or with logical, self-righteous acts such as that lead up to the Judas kiss, best of intentions paving the road to hell, as it were. From here, it is hubris and utter defiance against nature and one's own true calling. You hear about it, it's cliche, it's easier said than done, but most of the time when you are faced with a major challenge, that's your prompt to grow. That's your prompt that says, it's time to change. You've outmoded old ways and you need to progress. And sometimes it's difficult, especially if you fight it, or circumstances throw everything on its ear and you have to start over. I've started over 3-4 times now in my life at this point. And it's not fun. It's not easy, but aspects of your life are in cycles, and there's no way to get around it. So you can't take it personally, and I've spoken about that in some of my videos too. So certain terms like regret, melancholia, there's depression, there's guilt, there's all these things that you build your own prison with that can be used against you to manipulate you. And I've talked about that through some of my videos. Ultimately, a lot of what I'm getting at here, if I was to tell my younger self anything, that it's going to be all right, you have to trust the process, and that being patient is another aspect to this, but trying to read people and not make it about you, you know. I have a question. What's the opposite of love? Most people immediately reach for the word hate as a knee-jerk opposite, but the reality is that it's fear. Just like Yoda would say, fear leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. It's fear of what we don't understand. It's fear of what we project onto others. It's fear of the unknown out to get us. It's fear of the unknown out in the darkness. We react defensively without even knowing sometimes what it is. Hate's basically the emotional result.
I know what to do, I don't get this. You can't just lump things into two categories. Things aren't that simple.
Part of eliminating the fear is by identifying what it is, why it is, and ways to alleviate it, or incorporate it in the case of shadow work, or dissolve it as it's no longer necessary or an influence over us. Gaining the higher ground is key. Gaining a higher ground implies attaining a perspective in order to examine it, rather than being in the thick of it. Or even better, you can find your center and regard things impartially. And I've talked about that in my videos kind of all along. It's not exactly easy, but it's something to strive for. I've gotten my fair share of dark art, which I'm going to put up now. I've got chess pieces that I've had different inquiries about. The chess set was originally, I guess in a way, it started off as it was a Twitch streaming series, but it wasn't long after my father had died, and creating the chess set, it was dealing with death, it was dealing with those themes, and still trying to have some sense of some sort of archetypes on the chessboard. Even though it was on the dark side, I was still working through it. It wasn't intended as specifically as evil or anything like that. I printed out a bishop. There's a photo of it here that went for a gift. Part of the issue in high school was that I was not very big, and I was the new kid a lot, and it wasn't until my final year that I actually got larger. So up until then, I was picked on a lot and draw the Grim Reaper on people's book covers for them so that they would stand up for me or not beat me up anymore. I would let people think that I traipsed around on the dark side so they would leave me alone. You know, we like D&D. Back then, it was the satanic panic anyways going on with Geraldo and TV, and if you liked heavy metal at all, which I did, I had a leather jacket. I walked around in a leather jacket and boots with my friends, and I let people think things that wasn't necessarily true. And that's the point of cliques in high school anyways. I didn't really fit in anywhere, so I just did my thing and adopted a darker aesthetic like some of the neo-goths do today. And of course now, I mean, I have long hair and tattoos and look it anyways, but I assure you, do not condone the left-hand path, or I am not on the left-hand path. And then I went through that without becoming a bully. Now, one of the things that we used to do to scare ourselves as kids was we would dare to do the Bloody Mary mirror thing. We put a flashlight under our chin in the dark in the bathroom and stand in front of the mirror, and you repeat her name 10 times, and she reaches through the mirror and pulls your ears off, knife, whatever it is, she's supposed to come out of the mirror. And I'd freak out. I would chicken out and run out of the bathroom because I get these globes of light happen in the mirror and freak myself out. I don't know if it was behind me or if it was in the mirror or what. Man, I'm still getting goosebumps thinking about it. Mirrors in general, they need to be sealed. Personally, I use a pentagram seal with my own prayers on them, and I won't sleep with a mirror and open to me. I don't like it. Never would. I have an obsidian mirror now. That's volcanic glass. It naturally repels negativity, and it's actually volcanic glass, and the richness of it, it's not an immediate surface. There's a subsurface scattering, and a subsurface reflection that happens that's not the same as a silver-coated mirror. They've been used forever, and that's part of what the idea behind the channel name is called the Obsidian mirror, because they're definitely safer for self-reflection and scrying. Mine's actually is a hexagon, so I can get a cube out of it, or I can get an octahedron out of it, depending on which way I visualize it. I may do more videos on Kabbalah, but there's a very good friend of mine in Arizona, and he's the desert Viking, and he's got some awesome videos breaking down Kabbalah and different teachings to elaborate further on the right and left-hand path. Just this week, he put up a video that I need to plug because he goes into a much better elaboration on the mechanics of these things. And there's different orders and different schools of thought that he breaks down meticulously that will help a bunch. I've made a new friend, is Colin, and he's got a cool paper I downloaded, actually read, and he's got a lot of the Jungian methods have to do with mandalas and a circular form and a quaternary. So he's done a really great job at charting the psyche. As you are working on yourself, you're also working on other aspects. This shows you a way that once you start working on yourself inside, that it not only affects these things, but it also affects the crowd, it also affects society, it also affects our belief systems. So it's not just a chain reaction as much as a simultaneousness to it all that is an effect that we can have that we don't realize. That in a positive way, we can really have an impact, that just by working on ourselves, these other things are happening at the same time unconsciously, whether we like it or not. And it's really well illustrated. If you can wrap your head around it and work with it, then all the better. Yep, so check out my friend Colin Davis at Shadow Tech Alchemy, shadowtechalchemy.com, and you can find his YouTube channel as well. It's taken me a couple of weeks to kind of work through this, and even then, I'm not even sure I've been able to even scratch the surface, to be honest. We'll put Thesiger up because he always agrees. I'll explain Thesiger one day. Look him up. He's a hero. And it's going to always come down to your personal experience and how you deal with things. If you want to be fooled and led, that's fine. You're going to learn a lesson from it. Maybe that's what needs to happen. I'm not here to judge that at all. And I'm even talking to my younger self. I've made some stupid decisions and I've had to have my own consequences. Nothing outrageous, thankfully. But there's my own regrets and I've had to address them. And if I didn't, then I wouldn't have enough guts to sit here now recording this, to be honest, or have enough guts to apologize and own my mistakes, or to want to ask questions, to seek why things are, how, what makes people tick, or why am I reacting in such ways, or what does my conduct actually have to do with the bigger picture, or my opinion? What does it have to do with the bigger picture? It doesn't have anything to do with it, but it's still a thought that lends to the collective. So you have to claim some responsibility there. In the end, there's nothing to be afraid of. Don't forget, as above, so below. So you might see things that correlate outward that is an internal struggle somewhere, and it's an identifier and in a way of indicating that particular challenge, or it's going to keep repeating. That's what the oversoul does. It orchestrates these circumstances, and it will keep happening until you learn the right decision to make. It's your own Groundhog Day. That's what hell is.
Do you fear death?
Death is a reality. There's nothing to be afraid of. That's one of the biggest things that people are afraid of, is death. And I can't believe that this is all there is. When you can get from here to here, you get a different perspective of what all of that actually is. Not here in the emotions, but in the heart. When you can get that perspective, then you know it's not emotional or just some rationality. There's a truth there. The dark pillar and the white pillar, you have the middle path. That's the correct one. Because too extreme on the white gives you the Inquisition and burning witches and things that are atrocities. So much blood has been spilled in the name of religion and righteousness. For what? It's relative. It's not absolute. This guy surprised me. He doesn't really even have teeth or anything. It's just slithery mouth and drooly. And it's just like this crazy little monster, this little symbol. He's one of my little archetypes that showed up in this painting. He's unique to the painting. So we're keeping him, and I'm recognizing him as something that belongs to me. He's just a little devious monster. If any of this helped, please spank that like button, like, share, and subscribe. Don't be afraid. The only thing to be afraid of is the things that you're capable of. Anything else is transitory. It's not permanent, and it's not even real half the time. It's in our minds. It's what we project onto others, and it should hallmark something we need to work on when that happens. Thank you for your time here and your attention paid. Beauty in truth, truth, beauty.